Hi everyone. We're just going to give it 30 more seconds while everyone connects and then we will make a start. Okay. Hi everyone and welcome to IAB Europe's virtual CTV day for 2025. My name is Marie-Clare Puffett. I'm the Industry Development and Insights Director at IAB Europe and I am really happy to be here and to be your moderator for today's event. So thank you all for joining us, whether you're an IAB Europe member or part of the wider digital advertising community. This event brings together an incredible mix of professionals from across the ecosystem. And as many of you will be aware, IAB Europe is the leading European level association for digital marketing and advertising. And through our wide membership of national associations, media, technology, marketing companies, our mission is to lead political representation and foster collaboration across Europe. And today's event is a reflection of that mission, bringing together experts, innovators, and indeed thought leaders to explore crucial developments in the connected TV space. So why CTV? So CTV is an increasingly vital part of the digital advertising ecosystem. Viewership on connected TV devices has surged across Europe and indeed the globe, and it has become a core channel for content consumption. And as viewers shift from traditional TV to streaming platforms, CTV represents a dynamic opportunity for advertisers to reach audiences in new ways. However, and as we're going to get into today, as the ecosystem evolves, so do the challenges around measurement, fragmentation, transparency, consent. And so that's why we are here with our members supporting the wider industry with our Connected TV workstream and hosting events such as this. We want to make sure we provide a platform for open dialogue, debate on the latest trends, opportunities and challenges in CTV. By sharing insights, best practices and innovative solutions, we hope to drive the industry forward together. And this event offers a unique opportunity for you to hear from some of the best minds in the industry, to explore the trends, the issues and the challenges, and network with peers as we collectively navigate the future of connected TV. And every speaker you're going to hear from today is a member of IAB Europe. We're incredibly fortunate to have some of the brightest minds and thought leaders in our industry joining us to share their insights and collaborate on our initiatives. And if you or your organisation is interested in getting involved in future events, or indeed learning more about IAB Europe membership, simply scan the QR code on the slide now, and you'll find out more about how you can join. And as we are live today, and to get a better understanding of our audience, we're going to just run a quick poll. And if you could just take a quick moment to complete this so we can see who's on with us today. And I'll share the results in just a moment. So we're asking you which stakeholder category you're representing. So we'll give it 10 more seconds and then we'll see where everyone is from. Oh, we've got a great mix. Cool. So we have a couple of advertisers, a few agencies, a fair few ad tech and publisher representatives. That's great. A couple of people from the media or the press, some other trade bodies, and then a few others as well. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's really nice to see who's here with us for the event. So with that, let's just have a quick look at the agenda we have planned for today. As I said, lots of great speakers and panelists, all from our members. So first of all, we're going to just share a little bit about the connected TV landscape with some stats, and share some insights and learnings from our connected TV work so far. And I'll be doing that to kick us off. Then we're going to look at how we get successful measurement in a fragmented, fast evolving ecosystem with our first panel. And then finally, our second panel, we're going to close with some forecasts from industry leaders. So what do they see happening in the future of CTV, particularly in the next 12 months or so? And in between those two panels, we are going to have another audience poll as well to get your predictions on the future of connected TV. So please do engage in that. So before we kick off, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are live today and also being recorded. So please bear in mind that we'll be sharing the recording with everyone who's registered afterwards. And it will also be available on our website and in our next weekly wrap newsletter. And since we are running this as a live event, we really want to hear from you as well, our audience. So feel free, please, to drop your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will try and get through as many as we can as we go through today's session. So with that, let's get started. And I hope you find the event informative. And you are going to hear a little bit from me first, just on some of the work we've been doing at IAB Europe in connected TV. And as I said, some stats as well. So just bear with me one moment while I bring up my slides to get us started. So our connected TV working group kicked off around about 6 months ago. So it's a fairly new working group for IAB Europe. We're still building the community. But just some context as to kind of why we created a CTV working group and some of the work and challenges that we're trying to address over the next few slides. So we saw in our latest ADEX benchmark report that actually digital video totally is being driven primarily by connected TV models and formats. So primarily BVOD and SVOD. SVOD particularly, massive growth there. We saw over 200% growth in ad investment in SVOD services. So massive growth there, lots of opportunity, but as we all know, also lots of work to do. And indeed, actually, we found with a study we did with Double Verify last year that more than 50% of media buyers are frequently or always considering connected TV when buying media. So it's now become a real top of mind channel investment mechanism for buyers. And it's no longer just a kind of second consideration. It's become fundamental and core to the media buying ecosystem. And actually, what some other data shows is that it's no longer just a top of the funnel medium. Actually, we are seeing connected TV formats being used to drive performance, whether that's sales or other performance metrics. It's really here to both build brand awareness and also right through to conversions and sales as well. So again, it's becoming more and more critical to the entire media mix. However, we do see some challenges. This is just one that we wanted to highlight. There are obviously lots of other challenges in terms of measurement and buying and fragmentation, etc. But transparency is a particular pain point that we hear quite a lot about. And actually, we found that in terms of transparency into where CTV ads are placed, only 30% of buyers knew exactly where their placements were being placed in CTV apps or environments, which to us signals a kind of an issue and a concern that we need to address as an industry. And so with that, our CTV working group over the last few months has been focused on, I guess, two core things to start with. The first one is around, and I think this is part of the issue with transparency as well, is there's no real common way of defining connected TV and the different ads and placements within it and the terminology. And secondly, there is a lack of consistent, transparent and measurement and reporting. So they're the two things we've been trying to dig into a bit more in our working group and focus on with our members over the past few months, and we'll continue to do so. So in terms of definitions and terminology, we've actually very recently, just last week, published a digital video framework and glossary. So this framework provides a structure for thinking about the digital video and connected TV ecosystem. So we start from content and it builds right through to consumer. And in between that, you've got your business models, delivery methods, and devices. And we've broken the ecosystem down into those three core areas. And then there is an associated glossary for each of those, which hopefully everyone can get behind. We've had lots of input from a range of different stakeholders into this, from our CTV working group, but also indeed national IAB and Federation CTV working groups, committees, etc. So there's been a lot of input, and we will continue to iterate on this as we see fit and as updates are needed. And then in terms of transparency and measurement, this is obviously a much larger topic and lots more to get into. But we've done a couple of workshops and have kind of have a few things to highlight. So we first of all did a roundtable workshop style event in Cannes in collaboration with our member Nielsen. And we found kind of, I guess, three core things. First one is actually measurement for connected TV needs to be, we need to rethink measurement for CTV because actually the traditional KPIs that we've been talking about don't necessarily aren't necessarily fit for purpose, essentially. Secondly, performance is really important. I mentioned it a minute ago. Connected TV no longer just a top of the funnel awareness building channel, but actually it's being used as more of a performance sales driving channel, and that needs to be considered. And then finally, standardization and kind of lack of to address the fragmentation is needed. So whether that's in standardized metrics, standardized reporting mechanisms, that's something that needs to be addressed. And indeed, organizations such as IAB Europe, in collaboration with other organisations such as EGTA, WFA, are pivotal in making this happen. And so we held another workshop a few weeks ago in October with some sell-side organisations to try and dig into some of those transparency and measurement challenges a bit more. Some of the things we found, and there's a full summary of this workshop on our website as well if anyone wants to read a bit more. But essentially, there is inconsistency in terms of measurement and metrics across markets. That's something we know, and we can try and address that with things like standards and guidelines. Co-viewing and verification, they really limit comparability. So anything that we do in terms of standardization needs to take account of that. Digging into the performance metrics a bit more, there is inconsistency in terms of how these are requested and how much they're requested across different advertisers and agency teams. So I guess some markets are more mature in this than others. So again, something we need to think about. Alignment on common metrics and indeed taxonomies as well is important to drive progress. And again, this is something we can address in either sets of guidelines or standards. And then finally, in terms of transparency, the group tended to agree that actually, we do need some principles for transparency that everyone can kind of align around. And again, that's something IAB Europe will be looking at. And with that in mind, that we just have a very quick final slide in terms of what to expect from us. So immediately in the shorter term, we are going to be publishing a document which essentially outlines these challenges, both from a buy and a sell side perspective, and why they exist and potential routes for helping to solve them. The kind of medium term, we're looking at standard definitions for metrics, as I've just alluded to, and we will be exploring whether they need to differ for different buyer mechanisms, whether that's programmatic, direct, etc. And then the longer term is more around principles, guidelines for transparency that we will be looking to create with the industry and hopefully get everyone to align around. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour of the work that we've been doing and that we're planning to do and some of the challenges that we're trying to address. I know our panels today are probably going to touch upon some of these things and we'll have some ideas as well. So I think without further ado, we will get into the panels. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen because I realise that's one thing I need to do. And with that, I'm going to hand over to our first moderator, Cadi Jones, who is SVP EMEA for Index Exchange. So Cadi, over to you for the first panel.
Hi, Marie-Clare, thank you so much for the introduction. And I'm really excited to be here with an exceptional panel of folks. So I'd love to ask each of my panelists to switch on their audio and their video. Thank you. And just very briefly introduce yourselves. We'll go in the order of these slides. So Dan.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me along. I'm Dan Black. I'm head of CTV at Teads. I'm ex kind of a TV professional, but I've slowly kind of moved into ad tech side of the business. So thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Gregor?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Gregor. I'm Senior Director for DACH and GSA region here at Rakuten TV Enterprise, and I'm helping advertisers and content providers to explore and exploit the CTV channel in these areas.
Brilliant. And Stafaniya?
Hi, everyone. My name is Stafaniya, and I'm Senior Director Partnership Supply at Verve. We've been an omni-channel marketplace, and of course, CTV is one of our top channels where we are exploring and discovering new opportunities. So excited to be here today.
Well, we're glad to have all of you here today. I'm going to kick us straight into our first question because measurement is such an important topic here. And so I think if I can ask each of you, we'll start with Gregor and let's dig into how do we define success in CTV when measurement varies so widely across different platforms and devices?
Yeah, Katie, that's a good question. I mean, the measurement is widely different, but the KPIs are basically the same. We are looking at the KPIs that we know from the traditional TV, as well as new KPIs that come along with like the view-through rate. So I think where we should start is, and Marie-Clare just explained in her presentation, is to standardize the definition of the KPIs. And then there will be a little bit of variety in the way we measure, as everyone has his technology of trust. His partner, his third party, who are measuring this specific KPI, spanning from GRPs, upper level KPIs, upper level funnel KPIs, to really sales on a web page. So I think what we should do here as IAB members is really to push forward for standardization of KPIs, and the measurement will follow.
Dan, Steph, I can see both of you nodding through some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally for sure I'm in a line with Gregor. I think from my perspective, really, it's just kind of understanding, certainly from just having spoke to so many agencies, really understanding why CTV is being used as a channel in the first place. There's obviously a lot of press around, will CTV become a performance channel? So, should we be looking at what's driving consideration from an outcome perspective, but also leveraging kind of the key brand metrics? I think, the challenge really is that we measure in two different currencies. When we think about, I guess, CTV, it's very much about identifying the individual and reaching those audiences, whereas I said probably on the broadcaster side, it's more around household reach. So really thinking about how we can holistically tie those together through either a single ID or platform, I think is definitely going to help us moving forward.
And Stefania, I know you have at Verve, you have a lot of different platforms involved, channels involved.
Yeah, so from our perspective, bearing in mind that CTV is primarily seen as a high visibility branding channel, we think that measuring its effectiveness is complex because of the user journey. It's extremely fragmented across different devices, and an ad might be viewed on connected TV, and the resulting action could be app install or purchase, and often all of this happens later on a mobile or desktop device. So from our perspective, exploring user acquisition via CTV campaigns, probably also introducing new ad formats like interactive ads or shoppable ads, QR-based ads, post ads to improve viewer engagement, as well as enriching bid streams with content metadata like title, genre, duration should definitely help to build this bridge and to effectively measure users across different devices.
I think that's a really interesting thing that I think we'll dig into a little bit further as we go through this panel, Steph, because I think there's some really interesting points there around identifiers as well as signal that's interesting. So maybe if we can move, it's an IAB panel, right? So we have to talk about standards protocols at some point. So perhaps can you each think about, are there some specific technologies or protocols that show promise in bridging that measurement fragmentation? Dan, I think maybe I can start with you.
Yeah, 100%. I think, there obviously is, if you take an Amazon, for example, they own the complete kind of journey. So from their perspective, they might have kind of a different view on it. I think if we start with actually targeting and really is there a unified targeting approach? Because that would help us quantify kind of measurement from a standardization standpoint is, there isn't a huge amount of solutions in market. Everyone's kind of have a slightly different approach. We're looking certainly at an ID approach where we can drive value from context. Household ID graphs is, super important for us. And, some of the technology that we're looking at is kind of being able to holistically target people from on their personal devices, i.e., laptop, tablet, mobile, into CTV environments and really create what we call a unified audience. And being able to holistically manage that audience across multiple screens really is going to help us push, a standardized measurement solution forward.
Interesting. And Steph, I think when we talked ahead of time, Steph, you had some examples too, really specifically about some of the technologies you've been testing.
Exactly, and I completely agree with what Dan mentioned. I think it's a combination actually of performance enhancement, clear KPIs expected by marketer in the first place, and of course cross-industry collaboration. So just to give an example, we've recently managed under the hood of Verve to run successfully drive-in-store campaigns in Germany. By means of QR-based codes, ad with coupons, we've linked essentially users from CTV to mobile and managed to measure every single customer that was driven in store by redeeming coupons. So there is definitely a great movement towards bridging this measurement fragmentation. However, we should highlight that it also comes hand in hand with challenges such as hyperlocation targeting or scale.
I was going to say scale is the one that sort of springs to mind as perhaps being challenging in that space. I feel like it's going to be a stretch to get every advertiser to adopt that sort of technology and that sort of.
Adding to this, Katie, and what Steph just said, and then I think what we also have to bear in mind is as really digital natives, so to speak, here in this panel, that we have also to think of the TV, traditional TV and traditional TV advertisers. And there is scale a big topic and also a currency. So I think technologies is on the one hand side very important and good, but also something like a currency where we all agree on a reach measure a way of reaching households and net reach is also as important as the conversion on the back end. So because then we have the scale to do all the other stuff.
Yes. No, that's interesting. And I think this is something that's sort of relatively new for this space as we're thinking about TV becoming a sort of performance medium. Steph, I'd love to come back to you to talk, to start us off with this next question, thinking much more about that performance space as we are seeing sort of performance focused advertisers come into TV. Can you talk us through some of those sort of challenges that come up as well as the sort of opportunity that brings?
For sure. CTV to mobile attribution definitely is not standardized, and it's extremely fragmented, and mobile attribution partners use different solutions to measure installs, for instance. So they have predictive model and deterministic models. User acquisition campaigns are definitely working. And I will give a little bit later an example. So more advertisers are keen to tap into CTV devices by means of interactive ads or post ads. But at the same time, these non-standardized practices to measure performance are frequently questionable by marketers or advertisers as well. So for instance, we ran CTV to install campaign recently, and actually it outperformed our expectations, achieving lower CPI than we targeted, and also double-digit improvement versus its initial test phase. So campaign...
The objective was to install a mobile app? Or
exactly, to drive installs on mobile app. And campaign actually demonstrated that CTV can deliver the same accountability and efficiency as traditional mobile performance channels, while also adding incremental reach across premium publishers. But again, keeping in mind that the practices to measure it are non-standardized, right? It's also always questionable by advertisers how it was exactly measured by a combination of both predictive or deterministic models.
Dan, Gregor, what are you seeing in this performance space?
I mean, I genuinely think that the performance space is really, really exciting. I think, the great thing about connected television generally is that, that additional layer of, our ability to be able to really kind of understand a little bit more about those audiences. It's an exciting space. It negates also this kind of conversation around reach, because I think a lot of, when we try to access the kind of the wider CTV space, there's often a lot of pushback because, in some markets they can get a lot of that reach from broadcasters. Now, even if we're not linking to mobile attribution, from our perspective at Teads, a big focus for us is really around proving CTV has a detrimental effect on like web uplift as well. And we launched a traffic solution. It's a performance solution that we can use pixel data to measure post-campaign exposure, for example, or post-creative exposure, and measure that uplift and that action on site. And that's very much a big focus for us. And we can certainly see it's almost an easier stage than, say, attribution, because like Steph said, it's so much more difficult to quantify, attribution from that perspective.
I think we as digital are, always seen as someone who can measure everything from end to end. I think that's the imperative for us as well, and also a big chance and challenge. So yes, we should always think of being able to measure the interaction with the CTV or TV set with the remote control, which is the second device, by the way, at the TV when you watch TV. And I think that's something that we always bear in mind when we bring new ad placements into life or planning campaigns, that we should be the ones who are opening the response channel, the back channel. That was the big wish, the dream of all the TV advertisers, to have an interaction opportunity, and now we have. So we should definitely use it.
With great challenge comes great opportunity, right?
Yes.
It's not easy, but I think it's from what I'm hearing and what we're seeing at Index Exchange, it's unlocking a huge amount of value for streamers and for advertisers alike. Staying on this topic then of measurement and digging a bit more into the standardization and measurement frameworks that exist in CTV. Gregor, I'm going to call on you first, but what are the sort of biggest roadblocks? What are the biggest hurdles that are preventing that sort of standardized measurement across everyone?
Well, when we talk about roadblocks, we should also talk about walled gardens. This is something, and Dan just mentioned it. I mean, Amazon is, of course, in a good position, good for them, but is it good for all the advertisers and, free streamers like us at Rakuten TV? I think they should be as open as we are when, for the favor in favor of the advertiser to be measurable and transparent and exchange data about the reach. So I think that's one roadblock. Speaking of bricks, and the second is of course the traditional TV, which tries of course to still preserve their measurement on household level and not individual level, not impression versus household. So I think there's also, of course, a lot of change going on, and like in every change process, there are some heroes, you know, who move first, and then there are some no-nos who say, no, we keep what we have and we do it like we always did it. So that's, I think, the two very human. So one is the bricks, and the one is the human factor, right? So.
And Steph, Dan, in terms of them building on that, any additional roadblocks or any more color to kind of build on challenges?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like what everything Gregor says is super correct. I think I said at the start, I think, you know, again, we've got to think about how broadcast has always been traditionally traded when we think about household reach versus targeting the individual and bringing those currencies together. I think there's certainly discrepancies on the broadcaster side. Like what is a valid impression in CTV versus a TV kind of view as well. So making sure that we're aligning those kind of narratives and those currencies up from that perspective.
Who
And
do
then
you push with that? I mean, is that something that we should expect to him have more coming from the demand side?
It's a great question. I mean, I know there's some, you know, there's some working groups about, you know, talking about how do we kind of align on that. I mean, you know, I think the challenge is that everyone has pockets of really high quality data. If you look at the OEMs as an example with ACR data, it's super high quality data, but it's also super fragmented because they don't operate a standardized way of measuring that. When we think about context, what are the device or what are the signals being passed to us in the bid stream? So we all have a, you know, a fair shot of bidding on the same. There is no standardization, and that's the same for digital as well. You know, when we look at, you know, a Guardian versus a, you know, a Mirror, for example, you know, there was no standardization over context and how that's measured. So again, these are things that we could potentially align because then we're all bidding against the same criteria to help kind of forward that or unblock those, you know, those blockers.
And Steph, in terms of what you see at Verve?
So I would agree with everything that Greg and Dan just shared. And maybe to add on the top of this, also European market is extremely fragmented, and it's very difficult to standardize measurement across Germany and UK, for instance, because this is two different wall gardens, I would say. Plus, there is always slow industry adoption, to be honest, even if we come to an agreement and we have some universal measurement there. Just an example, like universal IDs, right? They have been already for quite a while, but still it's very slow to scale with many competing solutions. So essentially, not just lack of universal measurement, but also slow industry adoption, and plus what Dan said, signals that we get from the partners, right? They are different and user journey is different. So there are a lot of roadblocks to overcome.
And I think it's what I've heard. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, sorry, Cadi. I didn't mean to interrupt you. No, I was just going to also add on one thing that probably we haven't talked about as well is there's a lot of new formats in CTV. If you think about the home screen space, that more native space within the you know, with a lot of the OEMs, a lot of that inventory now is being monetized by TV teams, and it's again there's additional formats that don't necessarily lend themselves to traditional TV metrics, but they play an absolutely vital role in reaching, you know, TV audiences. At the end of the day, it's a huge piece of real estate that we can now access incremental audiences from. So again,
I think we should absolutely dig into that a bit more. I think in terms of then the challenges that we've heard, some of this is a different challenge depending on who we're talking to. You know, the poll that we ran at the beginning of this of our CTV virtual CTV day today showed that we have folks here from agencies, from publishers, from ad tech, from really across the industry. And I think between you all, we've sort of covered if someone's used to buying linear TV, then understanding what's the impact of being first in break or something like that is going to be a very different challenge to someone who's used to buying a specific one-to-one audience in online. But Dan, let's dig into this challenge of formats, because you're entirely right. We see a lot, I guess, from one type of roadblock to a different type of roadblock on a screen, right?
Yeah, and do you know what? I come from a TV background, so my mindset when I moved into this role in CTV is like, how do we drive that TV quality parameters that we're so used to trading in? Actually, first in break's really interesting because when we think about these newer formats, it's a first in screen opportunity. If you think about a lot of the diminishing audiences within linear television, a lot of those are younger audiences. They might not have any exposure to advertising, particularly if they are watching stream services like a Netflix or a Disney, where they're not on the ad-supported model. So that might be that one opportunity you have to reach for them. And actually being in first on screen in that slot could be a really kind of valuable placement moving forward, which is really cool, right? It's a really exciting space, and we can be really clever about how we utilize. Like you mentioned, roadblocks as an example. Stas mentioned about how we could drive kind of CPI. That is a great piece of real estate to be able to think about, leveraging, actions like that.
I think there's a huge opportunity around those innovative formats, but how do we balance that with the need for sort of consistent and comparable metrics? Gregor, Steph?
Well, it's always a client call. Where clients have the money and can also pay for the party and set standards. And I think with new formats like Dan just mentioned, our billboards that we have on the Rakuten TV home screen, where you can, make your first impression to both target groups, to the AVOD target group as well as to the TVOD, which is ad free. I think this is something that the clients should ask all of the publishers. How do you define success? And this is how we define it. And I think we have a question from the audience where the famous QR code, which was also for a long time a very, very innovative format. It's now questioned if this is just used by bored people who are using the phone while watching or not watching the TV. I think, yeah, it's true. Remote control is key, because it's just like I just mentioned, the second device that you definitely have in hand when you start this Rakuten TV app or any app or the start screen. But of course, you have your mobile, right beside you. Which is always not always fun when your wife is looking at it all the time, but or yourself. But of course, the QR code is also something which was questioned a long time from the client, but now it's widely adopted as a way of interacting with ad and CTV. So it's both bringing innovations and then the client setting the standards.
If I could as well, just to build on Gregor's point on that, what we've seen from a lot of research within Teads as well is when we introduce a QR code into the TV creative itself, so in an in-stream environment as well, it plays a significant role in driving brand awareness. We've seen huge uplifts and I feel like there almost needs to be standards too. That it's like migrating to the QR code. When we do that in the right way, we see a huge uplift in brand awareness, unaided awareness, and stuff like that. So that's super valuable. We commissioned Teads at the start of the year. We launched something called CTV Pulse last year. We did a second version of that this year, and actually some of the research that we saw within that is a lot of the younger audiences, if you think about their content journey, the way that they view television, I'm very old. Does anyone on the call know what an EPG is? An electronic program guide. I still use that to figure out what I'm going to watch for television, but Gen Z doesn't. They are used to watching content on apps, and I think there was some research on BBC iPlayer last year which suggested that those younger audiences, even though they could watch one of the football games live on the BBC, they were actually streaming it. Now, they are more susceptible to interactive formats, and I think that presents a huge opportunity for us. And the research from our CTV Pulse, really suggested that those younger audiences, whilst they're in their nascency to a point, and there isn't a high amount of engagement, when they become the norm, I think we will see, dual screeners utilizing things like QR codes. Are there any additional, technologies that we can utilize to help us drive people to websites, etc., or download apps, etc. So I think it's an exciting space from that.
I think it's a good point. Like user and consumer behavior is changing so much. Steph, I'd love to give you the opportunity to answer the question from the audience as well. Like we've had, you brought up the QR code example and the success that you saw for that advertiser. But does it mean that if people are picking up their phone that they are not engaged, that they're not giving their full attention to the screen? What do you think? And have you also got data to validate that, as we've heard from our other panelists?
Yeah, so maybe to answer to this question, I will be a little bit selfish. I'm always watching TV with my phone. And I think this is what is happening across many consumers. And that's a normal behavior right now, that everywhere where we are going, we have our phone with us. So of course, to measure attention, there were a lot of attempts as well, and a lot of companies doing it pretty much successfully. And we have specific time when there is a peak of watching specific series and so on. But at the same time, I believe that it's not about being bored. It's more about a habit, that we have right now, that everywhere we go, we have our phone with us.
That is a very much true, I think, today. And we've had another question come in through the audience Q&A, asking about those interactive formats, and if any of the panelists have any statistics around how much uplift is captured by interactive formats. I'm not sure if that's anything anyone can comment to now, or if we perhaps follow up through the IAB and share something to them afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, so less around, I guess, the direct kind of response from the actual QR code. With our new traffic solution, our mid-funnel performance solution, so we have a whole kind of new algorithm that's optimized towards kind of pixel data. And what we've seen, we've recently run a campaign for a hotel brand in Europe, and very similar to what Steph was saying, when we introduced CTV as a traffic solution, so we pre-optimized the creative. We can introduce technologies like Audio Stack, which is a fantastic technology if anyone doesn't know about that, but it's like a voice AI solution that kind of gives some personalization to the creative over the top of the actual TV creative itself. We saw an 11% increase in conversion. So that was what was reported back by utilizing CTV, an optimized CTV creative within that channel. So, that was really good. Cost per visit, cost per quality site visit as well. So that's time spent on site. We saw that outperform some of their kind of lower funnel channels as well. I think we have a case that we can probably share at some point as well. So happy to send that across.
Sounds like you have an avid audience for it. Gregor, you want to say something?
I can just add that we have a couple of showcases regarding QR codes in midstream, mid-roll creatives. On top of video, we have billboard showcases on our home screen, even more so, and some cases also which will be published on our newly homepage. Sorry for the promotion. There will be more showcases to come about also branded studies with third-party measurement providers like academics or audience projects, just to name a few. So yeah, watch out the space, and I think also the IAB will share with the IAB so that you can get it there as well.
Well, in our final minute of the panel this morning, or this afternoon, I think it's been very clear that I think we all agree strongly that we do need to advance measurement further in this space. I would love to ask each of you panelists just to contribute, bearing in mind the audience that we have here being so mixed from across the industry. What is one thing that someone listening, and you can say who that person would be from. Are they an agency, an advertiser? Are they a publisher, a streamer? And what is one thing that someone on this session today can do to help move measurement forward? Who wants to go first? So I have a volunteer.
I'll go first because yeah, mine's pretty simple really. I think it's I guess it's aimed towards kind of maybe more towards like the agencies and maybe the client side is really kind of define what your intent is for the channel itself. If it's a reach play or is it an outcomes play? For me that's that's probably the biggest thing because then we can steer the right outcome towards you or the right measurement solution for you.
So be clear about your objectives.
Agreed. And maybe from the publisher perspective, getting more signals, right? Getting more signals to make sure that we can make this perfect targeting for marketers.
Yeah, and yeah, for the whole group who is listening and watching, I would just want to emphasize that we are speaking about the same device. So for traditional TV, like for CTV, it's the same device. It's the biggest screen in every household. So just do it. Start believe in the CTV channel and work with it, and the measurement will follow. We're working on it. Together with the IAB. So I think it's obvious that this is a very, very important channel.
It really is. Well, I think from that perspective, Marie-Clare, do I hand back to you for the next session? But I'd love to just say a final thank you for everyone for joining. Thank you for the audience interaction, and thank you to the panelists there for their meaningful contributions today.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for hosting. It's brilliant.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and lots of food for thought there as well for our measurement and our standardization work. So thank you. So before we move into the next panel, we just have another quick audience poll. So the last panel is all about what we expect for CTV in Europe in 2026, and we wanted to get the audience's take on this as well before we go into that. So I think the poll will be popping up on your screen in just a second, but we want to know, what's your prediction for 2026? Will CTV boom and take over more digital ad spend? Will it continue its current growth trajectory but remain a niche part of digital? Will it stagnate due to some of the fragmentation and measurement challenges we've just been discussing? Or lastly, do you think it will decline? Or if you think something else, feel free to also pop it in the chat box. And again, we'll just give everyone a few seconds to complete it, and then we'll see what people think before we go into the next panel. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to select what they think, and hopefully the results will pop up on my screen in just a second. Cool. So most of you think either the first or the second. So either CTV is going to boom and take over more digital ad spend, or it's going to continue its growth but remain a niche part of digital ad spend. So lots of positive outlook for the connected TV space in 2026. So with that, let's hand over to our next panel to see what they think, if they agree or disagree, or whether that's slightly nuanced. So I'm going to hand over to Mark Taylor, who is head of connected TV at Azerion, to take us through our next panel. So Mark, over to you. I think Mark is just putting his video in. There we go. I can see Mark now.
Good morning and good afternoon to everybody, depending on where you are in Europe. My name is Mark. I am head of CTV at Azerion, and today I am very happy to be moderating the panel CTV 2026 Strategic Forecasts from Industry Leaders, where they will be sharing bold predictions, strategic insights, and data-driven forecasts for the future of CTV. And without further ado, we will introduce each of the panelists in alphabetical order. So, James, if you would like to go first.
Hi everyone, I am James Grierson, content partner lead at Samsung Ads. So for the last 6 months or so, my day-to-day has revolved around ensuring our app partners, the likes of ITVX, Channel 4 and BBC iPlayer, acquire and retain as many users as possible. And prior to that specialization, I was the agency lead across Omnicom Media Group and Havas for over 4 years. So I have a pretty good experience across the full spectrum of different advertisers and the way they've been utilizing CTV.
Thank you, James. And next to Rob.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Rob Gedge, and I work at WPP Media Solutions, formerly known as Group of Nexus, and I'm a solutions manager for all things video.
Thank you, Rob. And next to Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Lewis. So I'm Global VP of CTV at ShowHeroes. So essentially I work across all of our markets, Europe, LATAM, APAC and US, working with every team to, forward our solutions, whether it comes to product, supply, demand, marketing, do a bit of everything.
Thank you, Sarah. And finally to Thomas.
Hello everyone, Thomas Bernal, based out of Paris. I lead go-to-market for Ogury. Historically, we've sold, let's say, unique targeting methodologies on, specifically mobile and web channels. And actually, one of my roles this year was to lead kind of the expansion into CTV. So tons of fun learnings along the way. I'm happy to share that today.
Thank you very much, everybody. And just to everybody who's watching today, we really do encourage to send through some questions because we'll look to try and leave a few minutes at the end for any questions that you might ask. And actually, coming off of the previous panel, which was fantastic, I'm sure we'll dive into some of those topics a little bit more. And actually, quite interesting coming from that poll that most people see that CTV will take over as one of the biggest mediums, if not continue to grow as a niche. And I actually think that's a really good place to start when we go into 2026 to really understand actually from different parts of the industry what is top of the wish list. So the first question that I pose to our panelists are, what is the top of the wish list for media buyers right now? And actually, what is top of the wish list for media sellers? And Rob, with the WPP background, it would be great to go to you first to get more of a buy-side view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to keep it brief. So of course, advertisers are always going to want cheaper CPMs, but aside from that, we're always looking for ways to better kind of measure and control reach and frequency when you're activating across various publishers and platforms. So actually, I'd put that kind of the top of the media buyers wish list for us here at WPP.
Thank you, Rob. And then we'll actually go straight to the other side. And James, I guess more from a sell side perspective, what do you see as top of your wish list as you go into 2026?
So from the media sellers perspective, my personal opinion, we're basically simply keen to see a bit more synergy from agencies and how they're planning and buying CTV inventory internally. Recently, we have seen some really positive steps towards this. One example is some AV teams now buying home screen inventory. But too often, unfortunately, there's just multiple different teams and contacts that you need to speak to in order for the full potential of CTV opportunities to be realized.
Great. Thank you very much. And then I guess we'll go to Sarah and Thomas next. And in particular, Sarah, having more of that holistic view coming from ShowHeroes, where you have views on both the buy side and the sell side. I guess taking into account the points from Rob and James, what side are you going to take a bit more on? What do you see as the wish list for buyers or sellers?
I think definitely for the buy side, it's transparency around content. I think that's something that we have really found really very difficult. I think everyone has, right, found difficult in the industry when it comes to CTV is really understanding the content, understanding where you're delivering and being able to optimize on that, and consistency as well. So not just getting those signals, not just being able to understand it, but it coming in consistent, standardized way so that you can actually utilize it properly. I think that's on a bit both sides for sure on that.
Great. And then Thomas, to yourself as well. Obviously, you were mentioning Ogury's coming into the CTV space a bit more, coming in with fresher eyes and a fresher perspective. What do you see as that wish list? Is it something similar that you've heard already, or is there something really in particular from a buy or from a sell side that you think really should be top of mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what Sarah mentioned from a buyer's side, irrespective of the channel that you're buying against, transparency and let's say like lower complexity, lower, complexity to enter a market is always going to be important. I think what's unique about CTV in the current situation is, it has, I think, outgrown its original niche, right? So now you're getting into the higher level of expectations or standards that Barrier is going to have when it's, not just 2 or 3% of your media spend. And so effectively, I think it's the general ask they would have of any channels, but heightened scrutiny just because of the growing share, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay. And so already there's a few themes coming out of this. There's a big theme on transparency. There's also a big theme on standards that was touched on from the previous panel as well. I guess I will leave this open for somebody to answer, but based on that transparency piece, when talking about content, or particularly Sarah, you mentioned about content, where is that transparency at the moment? And really, what level of detail do we need to get to? Is it just within the ad pod itself? Is it actually by program? Because you've got people coming in from one space, from TV and from digital. So it'd be great to kind of flesh out a bit more where it is and kind of delve into where it should be.
We're definitely further along than we were. I think it's taken a bit longer than everyone expected to get to this point. We definitely have more understanding of content genres, of overall content themes. But we're not at the point where it's really being able to target against specific programs, and I think that is something that anyone coming from a TV buying background is quite used to. And then you've got digital side. CTV is this convergence of the two, the TV experience with the digital enablement. One of the beauties of that is this opportunity for so much more targeting. But there are things that are needed for that, right? And that's understanding of the content. You can see in other markets like the US where that really, really granular level is, I think, slightly more advanced. But we've definitely had a lot of progress, and we can use, specific tools. Like we have our own Semantic Hero AI to take what we are getting, better understand it, standardize it, and make it more targetable. But the more we can ingest, the better that will get. So I think it's just about being, especially on publisher side, being open to, being able to provide more in-depth metadata, which is just going to benefit everyone, I think.
Yeah, sure. And James, I can just see you're about to jump in, so please feel free.
I was just going to share it because, that demand for us passing data in the bid has been echoed throughout the landscape for quite a while now. And we have personally made quite big strides in that. We are now passing channel name, content genre, and content category, which we're really pleased with. The only thing that we deem really precious and we keep to ourselves for the moment, at least, is our ACR data. I think there are strides in that right direction.
Perfect. I think this actually leads quite well onto the next question when we're talking about signals being passed through, when we're talking about also the wish list. And actually, it was mentioned in the panel earlier, but we'll broaden the question now a bit more, that as the market is progressing and there's a lot of conversation, will 2026 be the year of performance CTV? Because there is a lot in the market about it at the moment. Or will it continue to be seen as predominantly an awareness-driving medium? And I think, Sarah, we'll go to you first to really understand from your background and a ShowHeroes perspective if you think it will be on performance or if you just think it will continue to be awareness.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to say the year of anything because we did have the year of mobile for like 10 years. So, but look, in the past year, there's been a big growth in performance campaigns. CTV has lower barriers to entry for clients who are more performance focused. We know that viewers take action after seeing CTV as well, right? There's lots of studies around this. We've done it as well. They search, they go on the website, everything afterwards. They take action. They consciously remember buying off the back of seeing a CTV ad. And as we saw in the previous panel, there's been a huge amount of progression in the way we can measure. So I think that is something that is definitely going to grow. I still do think at the core of it, CTV is TV. And I still think there is so much impact on brand. And I think we have to remember that. So I think it has to be a little bit of both. I don't think we will go down the pure DR route. I don't think that is on the cards because I think there is still so much impact that CTV has being a TV medium that we can't necessarily measure, these cultural moments, this big impact, these messages staying with you. But of course, there is the opportunity now to move more into the performance space, especially with things like more shoppable formats, more interactivity. Again, we heard this in the previous panel, but there's a big opportunity there. I just think we always have to bear in mind that extra value you were getting as well and not become so focused on like conversions that we lose sight of that. So there's a bit of both. I'm sitting on the fence, and I don't like doing that, but I think there is value to both.
Okay, thank you very much. Rob, I think coming to yourself from, again, that kind of buy side, that WPP perspective, when you're looking at CTV campaigns, when you have a brief come through and you have clients come through with the KPIs that they're looking for, how do you see CTV fitting in? Do you see it as a bigger performance driver going into next year, or do you still think it's going to continue to be on that awareness piece?
Yeah, I mean, actually touching on a couple of similar points to Sarah, but of course, CTV is used a lot for awareness, and I think it is brilliant at that. But the interesting thing about CTV over linear TV is obviously the abilities, the additional capabilities that we have for targeting and creative. So that extra like addressability and the extra precision from the digital world give it some real advantages driving performance. Um, One of the exciting things we actually have going on at the moment at WPP is open intelligence. And that is a large marketing model which is trained to predict audience response and performance across, well, all channels, but including CTV. So that uses signals that aren't personally identifiable, so things like behavior and context and location, which means it's a kind of privacy by design way of getting consumer insights. So making the most of that data actually makes us better at driving the outcomes like, online sales, in-store sales, footfall. But also I think creative is pretty essential to maximizing performance, as Sarah touched on there. So there's a lot more options than linear TV. So things like, interactive formats, shoppable formats, especially dynamic creative optimization. So you can do some cool things that aren't possible with linear TV. So things like showing the nearest store location to help drive footfall, or even, instantly purchasing a product through the TV without having to navigate through a browser. So I think obviously CTV kind of maintains that premium environment and the ability to story tell from linear TV. But by being strategic with the data and the creative, you can kind of combine it with those best aspects of digital to better improve performance.
Yeah, sure. And just to touch on that a bit more, we're talking about the content, talking about the targeting as well. Just from your point of view, from a WPP perspective, potentially, what's more important? Is it the content piece when it comes to maybe becoming more performance? Is it the targeting piece, or is it just a mix of both and actually just that wider ecosystem?
Oh, I think it's everything. Yeah, all of that plus more, right? So I think that's the thing about there is a lot of data sources out there, and sometimes we're not always necessarily receiving them all from a DSP at the moment. But when we look to go to sometimes like activate more from the supply side, then we get access to a hell of a lot more kind of signals that we might not otherwise be able to. So that gives us the kind of breadth across the whole ecosystem, like you touch on there, to really be able to kind of utilize this data to optimize.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And James, coming to you, when you have agencies, when you have clients coming to you with their briefs, are you seeing a balance on whether they want performance, whether they want awareness? Does it lean one way or the other?
Yeah, it totally depends on the advertiser and the client, right? So at Samsung Ads, we've actually been delivering both performance and awareness campaigns since the business first started. We basically launched with two main products. The first was app lift, so driving CTV app usage for the likes of Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, which is completely performance focused, obviously, as we can deterministically track end-to-end attribution from ad exposure all the way through to app open. And the second was driving incremental reach on linear buys for the likes of Lego and Adobe, which is all centered around increased brand awareness. So demand of both services was there from the very start, and it's been growing ever since. So moving into 2026, there's a lot of talk. We've heard it today, earlier panels about performance of shoppable ad formats, gamified shop ad formats, as well as planners getting savvy with attribution modeling. We even have our own first-party mobile app data now that we're starting to use to measure deterministic ROI. So not only measuring CTV app engagement, but now potentially looking to mobile app installs and mobile usage as a performance metric, which, that could basically open up performance CTV to any client that has a mobile app. Having said all that, let's not forget there are still many, many brands who are yet to unlock the benefits of driving optimal TV reach using CTV data. And funnily, I suppose, even those kind of campaigns can be measured with brand lift studies, right? Which kind of blurs the line between performance and awareness measurement, which is almost branding performance anyway.
Great, thank you. Really detailed answer there. And as we move into the next question, I think there's been a few hints of it, but no one's actually mentioned the term AI yet. So we can always have to have a panel with the mention of AI. And as CTV is growing, with it going more into the digital space, with it kind of taking advantage of all those digital pros, how do you see AI influencing content creation, ad targeting, and viewer engagement as we move into 2026? And I think, Thomas, we'll come to you first to get an understanding of your point on it and potentially what Ogury is looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's going to be an onus, or I guess like a willingness to effectively be even more targeted, even more precise, even more, outcome driven to some extent, thanks to AI. I think like in any AI discussion, it comes down to how much data are you willing to feed your AI to even do anything good, right? I think James mentioned to some extent, the willingness of the publisher side to retain some of its most precious data, right? At the end of the day, I always look at it like, yes, there is a massive promise, and I think CTV has been, legitimately so riding this promise of it's TV, but you can do so many things more. But ultimately, the way I look at it is, where will the balance or the equilibrium between supply and demand side land? Just to give you an anecdote, a few years back, I was on the retail media side, and obviously retail media and CTV were the hottest thing, or arguably still, fairly hot. And so the natural inclination of any buyer was, hey, what can I do with both, right? This would be kind of my ultimate dream. Okay, how can I get these channels or these kind of budgets to intersect? And the reality is it was impossible back then to do a deal involving retail media data and the CTV channel, because both sides legitimately so felt that they were strong enough on their own. I think we're now getting to the point where, as CTV specifically as a channel, you've reached, or you're beginning to reach, the extent of your own legitimacy, and you've kind of gotten your fair share of attention and your fair share of budget. So now, you need to begin competing with others on slightly different terms than your own, right? And so I think to that extent, or kind of to illustrate that, to me, the Amazon and Netflix deal was a very, very interesting one in terms of where the market might be heading. And, to your AI question, and to come back to that, I think the more data, and specifically external data as well, specifically outcome data, we'll see get into the mix, the more it will be legitimate for AI to be able to bring value beyond just the pure awareness angle, on which at this point, the publishers all have all of that data.
Thank you. And just to touch on one of the points you mentioned there, it sounds like, are you saying as the market's progressing, within the space, it's really about trying to find that extra edge around whether it's the offering or whether it's the outcomes. Would you agree or disagree that AI then really the focus is more on efficiencies and being able to drive that extra incremental across anything that's done within the CTV space?
Yeah, I mean, specifically for the clients that we address, and, obviously I'm going to preach for my own house here, but obviously targeting capacity and precision and transparency is very much a huge point of concern, right? Or at least a huge point of opportunity, you could say, given that today there's still a healthy amount of data that doesn't come through in the bid requests, or it's just the space is too fragmented to have a kind of a clear view of what's happening. So I think that's always going to be relevant. But I think if you want to go beyond that, or once that problem is solved, it's okay. It might still be a brand channel primarily. How is it affecting in some shape or form business outcomes? I think to do that, okay, now you need to have not only visibility into that transparency from a targeting standpoint, but you need to begin infusing your whole ecosystem and your whole way of buying with slightly different data that by design is external, right? I think the shoppable ads will be great, but to me, they're more kind of a first foray into the topic as opposed to the long-term solution, right? I think we can go much, much further out, but that implies, various actors being willing to share the cake, right? Share the value that's extracted, share the profit, and, to effectively let advertisers optimize towards that.
Thank you. And James, coming to yourself, you mentioned earlier on in terms of the wish list about marketplaces and streamlining. I guess from your perspective, more from that sell side perspective, OEM perspective, how do you see the rise of AI and automation kind of impacting everything CTV, but also the business?
Yeah, so we have actually already adopted AI technology in a product suite that we call Smart Outcomes. It basically enables us to sift through the billions of different data points we have on over 10 million TVs you have in the UK alone, for example. And we use that in order to find audiences that will drive the most favorable outcomes for buyers, depending on their KPIs, of course. But whilst this is a relatively elementary use of machine learning, during the next phase, I see AI actually being utilized far more heavily on the creative and content curation side, actually. So one example could be AI-led content curation for our users. So analyzing our users' TV consumption habits to make educated guesses in recommending similar content that they are likely to enjoy. And then somewhat, maybe a little bit further down the line, it may allow for things like hyper-personalized AI ads to be served in real time with the right compliance in place, of course. But these ads could be utilized blending behavioral, contextual, geodata to optimize that relevancy, I suppose, and subsequently outcomes, which is all, really exciting stuff.
And Rob, coming to yourself, you mentioned earlier about WPP intelligence. There's a big play there at the moment for machine learning and AI. From your perspective and from what you're seeing, where do you think the biggest impact then is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, I touched on that open intelligence earlier, and I think that is going to be, a big game changer for us. But from a consumer's perspective, I'm also quite interested in the content side of things. So, I think, in recent years, we've seen pretty huge growth of YouTube on CTV. And YouTube obviously hosts quite a lot of different types of video, but a big portion of that is, content creators and influencers. And they're often, quite small teams. They might not have access to the same resources that, a big film and TV studio might have. So we know, Gen AI for video at the moment isn't perfect, but it has improved quite a lot in recent years. I'm sure you've seen some of the videos. And the signs are that, it will continue to improve going forward. So I think by harnessing this technology, it can be quite a powerful tool for the creators to make content that they might not otherwise be able to. Um, but of course, on the other side, that comes with some concerns around, privacy and copyright when you don't really know the data sets that are being fed into these models and you don't really know the guardrails that are in place. And actually, I think a good example of this is Bryan Cranston, the actor from Breaking Bad. He was in the news recently talking about how he's kind of lost control of his likeness after people using OpenAI were able to create videos using his voice and his likeness without his consent. Um, and actually, it's not just a consideration for the smaller creators, but big film and TV studios are under financial pressure, and AI represents an opportunity for them to kind of reduce some of their costs. But that's actually one of the reasons why one of the big actors unions in the States went on strike fairly recently, a couple of years ago maybe, to try and prevent the replacement of actors on set with AI. So I think, AI is likely to have an influence on the content that we're consuming on our TVs, but I think caution also needs to be, exercised how that's being used.
Very, very detailed answer. And Sarah, coming to yourself, I know ShowHeroes have a big background from a content perspective. Do you see it as something similar as well?
Yeah, I was going to say, so, content is very close to our hearts. We've got our studios team who are content creators, right? I think there's two parts to AI, right? So what we have to remember is that tasks that don't need empathy, so something like data collection or something like targeting and optimization, AI can, take over those tasks because it takes out that human bias, right? And it actually makes it more efficient. When it comes to content creation, there are some brilliant tasks that it can augment and make us more efficient, right? So storyboarding, editing, all these kinds of things. I think, though, we have to still value we have to really value original content. We have to really value authenticity, empathy, things that connect with audiences. And audiences need to be able to see or relate to content as well, right? So I think we have this balance and this responsibility as well to make sure that, yes, we are using AI to make things efficient, we're using it for the opportunity that it is, but we are maintaining that authenticity and originality, because without that, you will end up churning out the same thing again and again that looks very uncanny valley, no matter how perfect and how many fingers the person in the ad has. And you will get, I think there will be this churn of everything goes to AI created, and the audience will lose engagement and attention from that. And then we'll go back to, you know, slightly more authentic and more original stories being produced. So I think we just really have a responsibility to maintain that human element, maintain empathy within the content that we create, so that we can speak to audiences, and keep producing things that are exciting and that people want to watch on their TVs. You know, TV watching, we watch long form content. We sit back in the evening, we watch hours of content a day. So I think, yeah, AI is a huge opportunity, and we're using it in lots of different ways, right? But if we're looking specifically at content creation, we have this balance to maintain, and we have to make sure we value creative people as well. Like our studios team are amazing. They come up with ideas I would never think of. And I think as an industry, we can kind of forget that sometimes, maybe not value it as much as we should. So I think we really have to keep that balance. We have a responsibility to our audiences as well, to keep them engaged and keep producing content that they are interested in and is genuine to them. But you know, AI can do so much more as well. You know, this personalization. I think in the previous panel they mentioned Audio Stack that we work with as well. This being able to personalize the audio to your nearest location, right? So that's something that would have been extremely manual and annoying to do without AI. I think that's the perfect use of AI, right? Because it's making that extra personalization, actually speaking to the user more, but doing it in an efficient way. So yeah, there's a huge amount that we can do with it. We just have to be very responsible with it, I think.
Great, thank you. And it sounds like, yeah, a big theme coming from that question is predominantly focusing on content, which is really good to hear, because a lot of the time within the industry, it's about the targeting and it's about actually reaching the consumer. But it really sounds like then that there needs to be authenticity, control over the content itself, because then if we lose the engagement of the consumers who are watching, then as an industry, as advertisers, everybody loses out. So it's really starting with that consumer piece, and then it's moving through the different stages to the point where it gets to the advertising point. So really good overviews, fantastic. And just in the interest of time, I'll ask one final question before going to some of the questions that are coming through from the audience, and really going straight back to the title of this panel is around the predictions. So, James, coming to you first, what's your number one prediction for CTV in 2026, and why you think so?
Okay, I'm excited for this one, as I believe 2026 is going to be the year that the value of the home screen advertising is finally realized. CTV is still typically considered as in-stream audiovisual formats in and around VOD and or fast inventory, which is brilliant. But in my opinion, the real value is actually in the home screen, especially when we consider the audience fragmentation we're seeing, the plethora of different content apps and services our users now have access to. You know, for us at Samsung, we're super lucky, as it doesn't really matter how many different apps are available, as that TV home screen acts as that stable constant across any and all changes in TV consumption behavior. It's that first and last guaranteed commercial touch point. I could go on about it forever and ever. But yeah, we recently actually had great success with a very well-known luxury car brand, where we did roadblock home screen takeovers in around the men's Six Nations. And after that campaign, we actually did a study with MTM that found that 66% of users who saw that home screen ad actually associated the car brand with the tournament, even though they actually had no official affiliation. So yeah, I think in 2026, more and more advertisers are going to wake up to that potential. And funnily enough, a lot of that waking up comes with clients see these activities on their own TVs at home and then give us a call, which is fantastic.
Thank you, James. And Thomas, coming to yourself next, what is your number one prediction for 2026 in CTV and why?
It's somewhat of a self-serving prophecy, but I think, coming back to the earlier point, the proverbial walls of the gardens coming down ever so slightly, right? Effectively, the publisher side seeing the value of letting other players in, whether it's for modeling and targeting, whether it's for measurement, and effectively sharing that value. Yeah.
Thank you. And Sarah, to yourself next, your number one prediction?
Yeah, mine is the convergence of retail media and CTV. So obviously Thomas mentioned earlier, two big buzzwords coming together. But there is so much value in this. You know, I've heard a lot of the TV screen is the new storefront, the shoppability, these people taking action, being able to actually use retail data, like we use Currys data in UK, MediaMarkt in Germany, being able to target people who are in market for a specific product and show them a high impact, highly engaging, interactive ad that they can then go to another screen and purchase. I think that's huge. And I think that opportunity will really start to be realized next year.
Thank you very much. And finally, to Rob, what is your number one prediction? Why?
Yeah, so in short, it's around the role that CTV will have to play in cross-channel activation. So, cross-channel, omni-channel, they're big topics in the industry at the moment. And obviously with TV, the benefits are kind of intuitive, right? It's big screen, it's audible, completed in full. It's often surrounded by high quality content and sometimes there's some co-viewing. So for the most part, the same can be said for CTV. And that type of environment really allows for opportunities for storytelling within the ad and creating emotional resonance and an ad that lodges in the memory in a way that might be more difficult to achieve with some of the other channels. Um, so it's a high impact medium and it serves an outsized performance, and that actually has a halo effect on the kind of rest of a cross-channel strategy. So there's a study on this where WPP collaborated with ThinkBox across a range of, brands and categories, and they found a synergy where the impact of ads on TV actually increased the impact of ads in the rest of a cross-channel strategy by a significant amount. So, when you see a CTV ad, that's kind of the hero ad helping you to build familiarity with the campaign, which is boosting the performance of the rest of the campaign. So, when you see a display ad that contains the same imagery or an audio ad that contains the same messaging, it resonates more because you've already been familiarized with the campaign. So yeah, my prediction is that CTV will act as an accelerator for cross-channel performance and elevate the impact of the rest of the channels in the mix.
Great, great prediction and great predictions all around from everybody. Thank you. I can see Marie-Clare, you've come back on. I appreciate we've just run out of time. I don't know if I've seen a couple of questions come through from the audience. I don't know if we've got 1 minute, 2 minutes to answer one.
Let's do one. Go on. You choose.
Let's do one. Okay. So one question's come through that how is CTV currently being bought? Are there many different ways? And if so, what do you see the best way? So I'm gonna twist that question slightly just to make it relevant to the 2026 piece. We'll leave it open to very quick answers, but essentially, how is it being bought at the moment as a holistic view? And into 2026, do you see any changes to that, or will it continue to be the same? So I will leave it open to somebody if they want to pitch in on the answer.
Ever so quickly, it's being bought via managed service and programmatically via programmatic guaranteed and PMPs. Traditionally, we are seeing more programmatic demand coming in, as I think I mentioned earlier, with curated agency marketplaces. I personally see the shift going towards more of a programmatic access in the future.
Great. And then time just for one more answer from anybody.
Yeah, I mean, agree. It's being bought programmatically and IO, but I would say OMP is potential as well. In the US, you see a huge OMP marketplace that you don't see in Europe right now, but I think there is potential for that to grow. And as for what is the best way to buy it, whatever way works for you. I think there's part of the beauty of CTV is that it is more flexible. So yeah, whatever way works for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate we're out of time. So thank you, James. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Thomas, for joining. Thanks to everybody for attending and listening. And I will pass back over to Marie-Clare.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you to that great panel and for all of the insight and forecasting for predictions for CTV. I think lots of what I took away is there's so much opportunity in connected TV, whether it's through home screen ads or the collaboration between retail media and connected TV. I think lots and lots of opportunity, and it's kind of from an IAB Europe perspective, it's no coincidence that I lead both our retail media and our connected TV work streams, because we do see lots of opportunity in both of those areas, and in particular both of those areas coming together. So as we wrap up today's event, just like to take a moment just to thank everyone, our speakers, moderators, and of course all of our members and our attendees. Your engagement and the insights shared today and contributions make it both a valuable and thought-provoking and hopefully insightful session for everyone. Hopefully it gave you all fresh perspectives, some practical takeaways, and also some inspiration as we move towards 2026. So the conversations and lots of the things that have been brought up in today's event will continue in our working groups, particularly our Connected TV working group. And so if you are already a member, please feel free to engage and lean in. And if you're not, again, please feel free to reach out to us and discuss those opportunities. And just a quick reminder, today's event has been recorded. And so we'll be sharing the recording and all of the key takeaways on our website in the coming days. So if you've missed anything or you want to share it or receive those insights, they will be available very soon. So we do have a few upcoming events just to make you all aware of, and you can use the QR code on the screen to get more information and to register. All of our events, our virtual events, are free to attend, so feel free to sign up. So first one we have coming up in just a couple of weeks is on responsible influencer marketing, an online webinar in which we're going to discuss, how policymakers, regulators cooperate with the industry on this topic. Then we have our second virtual programmatic day of 2025 on the 26th of November. This is a long-running event that we've been hosting for many years now, and we talk everything programmatic, whether it's transparency, sell-side decisioning, lots of different topics to be discussed there. Then the next day we have our virtual Mix Awards Europe ceremony. So this is our creativity awards competition. So if you've entered or your clients have entered, partners have entered, please log in and see who the winners are. And then finally, we're going to close the year with our State of the Nation webinar with our Chief Economist, Daniel Knapp. And I expect he's going to be talking lots about what's happened this year in the digital advertising ecosystem, but also what we can expect with the year ahead, and lots of great insights. And finally, just to ask everyone, if you haven't already, to take 10 minutes or so to participate in our Attitudes to Digital Advertising survey. This is a kind of benchmark of where we are in our industry, what's driving growth, what's challenging investment, different buying models, etc. So please do take 10 minutes if you haven't already to share your insights. And then finally, in terms of trainings, we have a half-day online course on environmental sustainability in digital advertising. We have 2 dates that you can choose from, either the 20th of November, which is actually a US-friendly start time, or on the 27th of November, which is geared towards a Europe time zone. And with that, finally, just to thank everyone for tuning in today, for being with us. We appreciate your time. Thank you again to all of our great moderators and speakers, and we will hopefully see all of you soon. Thank you very much.